Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
morning, grade 8 learners. Welcome to our today's natural science lesson, proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. My name is Milton Gomo. Let us look at the structure of our lesson today. The knowledge area of our lesson is planet Earth and beyond. The topic of our lesson is looking into space. And the subtopic of our lesson is air viewing of space. This is the structure of our lesson. Let us get ready as we look at the objectives of the day. By the end of the lesson, we are supposed to be able to explain how alien cultures viewed the space, and also being able to give African names of stars and constellations, and finally are supposed to be able to explain how the first telescope worked. So these are the objectives of our today's lesson, and of course the source of our lesson is CAPS document page 55. Remember to keep in touch with us through our WhatsApp number 079-578-2908. Always send all the solutions to all the activities we're going to be doing throughout the lesson through our WhatsApp number 079-578-2908. Okay, now let us look at the pre-knowledge that you're supposed to recall as we go through our today's lesson, so as to understand very well what our today's lesson is all about. Right, you need to recall the topics that we covered in grade 6, the solar system, systems for looking into space, and systems to explore the moon and Mars. Not only that, you need to recall as well the topics that we just covered recently in grade 8 and the solar system. So if I have to recall these topics, it's going to be easy for you to understand our today's lesson. And this pre-knowledge, we can safely start by answering our baseline activity. Let's do it in 4 minutes. Let us look at the questions for baseline activity. Number 1, it says, what is a galaxy group? Right. Number 2, what's the name of the galaxy group? That the Milky is a member of. Then number 3, what are clusters of galaxies and superclusters of galaxies? And then number 4, what is the size of the observable universe? So this is the baseline activity. With the pre-knowledge, we can easily do this activity. Let us do it quickly in 4 minutes. Then from there, we do the corrections as we proceed. Okay, welcome back. Let us look at the activity and let us go through the solutions as we discuss the activity that you've just done. Right, number one, you're supposed to state what a Galois group is. Let us find out the solution to that question. A Galois group, this one is a collection of 50 or less galaxies held together by gravity. So that's what is called a Galois group, right? A collection of 50 or less galaxies that are held together by gravity, right? Number two, the question says, what's the name of the Galois group that the Milky Way is a member of? Remember that the Milky Way is the name of our own galaxy. Our galaxy is called the Milky Way galaxy, but then it also belongs to a Galois group. And find out the name of this Galois group, which the Milky Way galaxy belongs. Right. So our very own Milky Way galaxy belongs to a Galois group which is called the local group, Number three, supposed to differentiate, right? Between cluster of galaxies and super clusters of galaxies. Let's find out what you mean by these two groups. A cluster of galaxies is a collection of 50 or more galaxies, right? It's a collection of 50 or more galaxies held together by gravity. So that's a cluster of galaxies, right? A collection of 50 or more galaxies, and of course they're held together by gravity, right? Then now, clusters of galaxies often group together to form larger structures, and these larger structures are now called the superclusters of galaxies. So that's how those two Galois groups differ from each other, right? We've got a cluster of galaxies and superclusters of galaxies, right? Number four, which is the last one. What's the size of the observable universe? What is the size of the observable universe? Okay, the size of the observable universe is 28 billion light years, right, in diameter. So I'm not talking about a smaller or little length here. It is a very big size we're talking about here. 28 billion light years. Remember that we use light years to measure the distance between objects in space, like stars or planets. Okay, so our universe is 28 billion light years in diameter. That's the activity, the baseline activity. Let us do the corrections for those who did not do it so good. Then for those who did well, of course, keep it up. Right, let us move on. As we go through the detail of our lesson, we are going to look at the terminology that we're supposed to be able to understand and use as we go through our lesson. Right, let's define what a telescope is. Okay, shown in the picture there, that's a telescope. Okay, but then what is it? A telescope? It is an optical instrument that makes distant objects appear near. Okay, it is an optical instrument that makes distant objects appear near. That's a telescope, right? Remember that this is the instrument that the scientists use to view space. And remember, if you recall, the name of the scientist who studies stars, planets, and uses the telescope to view through space is called an astronomer. So always recall that. Let us define astronomy, right? This is the study of bodies in space. All bodies in space, we'll talk about all stars, we'll talk about all planets, all comets, asteroids, all the objects which are found in space, right? There are scientists who study these objects, right? And the study of them is called astronomy. Then now, of course, astronomy is being studied by these special scientists who are called astronomers. Let us define an astronomer. An astronomer is a person who studies the bodies of space. That's an astronomer. Right, let's move on as we define a constellation. A constellation is a group of stars that when viewed from the air, they form a pattern in the sky. That's constellation. That's constellation. Now, let us go in detail of our lesson. Early viewing of space, right? Early cultures tended to associate the stars and planets they saw in the night sky with animals or gods and told stories. So that's how early people were able to associate the stars and planets, right, to their own world. They would tell stories, right, and also talk about the gods and also relate those stories to the animals using all those views that they took from the night sky, right? Then now these stories, once they were told, they were passed on from generation to generation about the patterns in the sky, which were passed down from generation to generation. So this you can now read that it was a continuous or still a continuous, right, process of being able to know what's happening, right, within space. So people were able to know about the space. They used stories to relate their world and also being able to know about the stars in space. And they would pass this from one generation to another, right? Early telescopes were used by merchants to spot approaching trade ships or pirates. So there were many things that these people would use so that they would know what's happening around them. Okay, so the early telescopes were used by these merchants during trading time to know or to spot the approaching ship, okay, or pirates. Early cultures around the world gazed at the stars in wonder. They noted the movement of the stars and planets across the sky and used this to mark the passage of time. So they used a lot of skill to know about the time and also be able to take the time, right? They would use all the movements, right, of the stars and planets across the sky. People often grouped the stars they saw into patterns, and these patterns were called constellations, right? Let me just say that a constellation is a group of stars that when viewed from the air, it forms a pattern, right? So that's a constellation. Okay. Now, the early people were able to use a lot of skill, a lot of art to associate the stars and also give names to them that would suit their African culture. Right. The three brightest stars in the Southern Cross were seen as female lions. Were seen as female lions. Perhaps women also changed into stars by the magical girl. So interesting. So these people used a lot of skill to know about the world around them and to know about the space and be able to know about the stars, right? And they were able to give them names, right? Let's talk of Venda people. What did they call the sun? The Venda people called the sun and the moon, Druva, and Nwezi, respectively, right? So Nwezi is the sun, right? Okay, Nwezi, that's the moon, then Druva, that's the sun. That's the Venda ones, okay? So they called the sun, that is what, Druva, then they call the moon Nwezi. So that's how the Venda people were able to name the sun and the moon. Then we come now to the Bushmen. How do they relate the stars to their own world and culture? The Bushmen imaged that the 2-point stars of the Southern Cross were two male lions, and they had once been men before, and they were thrown up into the sky to be stars by this popular magical girl, right? So now the Bushmen are also able to know about the stars around them and also give names that will suit their own culture, right? So you can see that they use the Southern Cross and then imagine it as a what? As two male lions. And now listen to what they were saying. They said these two men who had once been men before, right? They were thrown up into the sky to be stars by a magical girl. So you can see interesting stories were came up and were told for different cultures to suit their culture, so that they were able to know, right, about the stars around them, about the space. Okay. Now also look at the Khoikhoi. It also their way of narrating stories to do with the space, to do with the stars, right? The Khoikhoi thought that the pointers were the eyes of some great beast, and they were called Mura, which means the eyes. They called Mura, which means eyes, right? So that's the Khoikhoi. Okay. Then now look at the Soto, Tswana, and Venda cultures, right? In Soto, Tswana, and Venda cultures, these stars are called Tutulwa, which means the giraffes, which means giraffes. So that's how those stars were called. The bright stars of the Southern Cross are male giraffes, and the two pointer stars are female giraffes. So they had a very good skill of understanding the stars and telling good stories that will picture and make everything so easy to know about the stars. The Venda named the fainter stars of the Southern Cross Tutana, which means the little giraffe. Okay? Now, there is a Southern Cross. There is a Southern Cross, as you can see. Right? And also the pointer stars. Right? If I remember, when we started the Milky Galaxy and we talked about the spiral arms, right? So recall about the Southern Cross and pointer stars. The Soto used these stars to indicate the beginning of the cultivating season, which began when the giraffe stars were seen close to the southwestern horizon just after sunset. All right, let's look at the detail which talk about different tribes and how they were naming the stars, right, and constellations, right? Recall that we talk about the viewing of space. Let's look at the Xhosa, right? In Xhosa, the Milky, they call it umnyele, right? This one, it means the raised bristles along the back of the sky. All right, let's look at the Zulu, right? This one, we've got a star which is called Sirius in Canis Major. Okay, this is the star that draws the dawn, right? What about the Southern Cross here? Southern Cross. This is the tree of life, which guides wanderers, and indicates the points of the compass at night. So that's how the Zulu were able to tell or give name to these stars that appear in the night sky. Then we've got the Chiguasi and the Khoikhoi, right? They also had a way of naming the Orion. Okay, the three stars in a row are the three zebras, right? The Pleiades, and these are the rain stars. These are the rain stars, right? Then look at the Lobedu and Venda. Lobedu and Venda, right? For the star, the Canopus, this bright star is Naka, whose rising marks the beginning of southern African winter. So this helped them a lot to be able to tell the weather patterns, to be able to tell the brightness of the day, right? etc. What about the Sun people, right? How do they name the Taurus star? This is the male beast, a large, swift-footed antelope with ringed horns. And now for the Orion, how do they name this one? This one is a reddish colored star. It is the female beast, right? And then now for the Milky, they say this one is a road or footpath across the sky. A road or footpath across the sky. Then now about the Soto and Swana. How do they name the Southern Cross? How do they name the Southern Cross? They say this one is Titulva, which means the giraffes, Okay, then how do they describe this one? The brighter two stars are male giraffes, and the dimmer two are females, right? And now, how do they describe the Sirius and Canis Major? This one, they described is this one. They described as what? As a really bright star, which means Indosa. This one is the star that proves the night across. So they called it Indosa, which means the star that proves the night across. So those are just a few details of how different tribes were able to tell and mention different types of stars, right? And gave names using their own cultures. Okay, so you should always recall that. Now, let's look at how they were also able to name the constellations. We're naming the stars in that table. Now let's look at the constellations. How were they able to name and find the constellations, right? Now, this one for the north, right? With Indosa, which means the star that proves the night across. So what about the constellations now? The northeast with they named the Hunter's Arrow. Okay, east, three zebras. Southeast, male beast is Limela. Right. So now, these are the locations of the different constellations using the map that these cultures were able to craft. And now they would be able to locate where different types of these constellations are located in their map. Right. Then in the south, they would know that what they have is the female beast. Right. Then now, the southwest, they had flock of birds. All those are names of constellations that were able to give, so that they were able to know about the location of these constellations once they viewed their own map. Okay. Now, in the west, we had Tututla, which means giraffes, and those are located also in the Southern Cross. Northwest, we had Naga, where we've got Canovas or Leo. Right. So this is the map that we're talking about here. The star map of African constellations, right? Remember those constellations? They were able to give them names, right? And now they to know where they are located in the African map, right? Let us check it out. Now we've got the southern horizon, the southern horizon. So this map is divided into four locations or four parts. We've got the southern horizon there, then we've got the eastern horizon, we've got the northern horizon, and we've got the western horizon, right? So through this map, right, different tribes were able to locate, right, all the constellations that are found in different parts of the map, right? What we have in the eastern horizon, right, we've got the male beast, right? So those are the constellations, right? And then we've got the female beast, right? Then we've got what? Islimela, right? Islimela. And they refer to this one is the digging star, right? We also have here in the northern horizon, we can talk of Endosa. There it is, Endosa. Remember, this one is the star that pulls the night across. So they were able to describe and tell, right, the locations of these stars and constellations through their own culture, so that they're able to understand, right, it better, right? So we had this one, the Canopus, referred to as Naka, and it's found in the northern horizon. If you want to check it from the African map of constellations, right? And also under the northern horizon, also you have the Tulwa. This one is the constellation which is referred as the giraffes, and is found in the southern cross, and of course in the northern horizon. Right, let us check now what we have in the western horizon. We have the pointers. Now we've got a star. That one is Leo. There it is, right? And also we've got Ursa Major. There it is. And then of course, and this got to stretch to the southern horizon, where you've got the constellation which they named as what? Flock of birds, right? Flock of birds. And now under flock of birds, we having different other constellations that form a pattern there. So this is just a brief African map of constellations which show where each constellation is located. Right. With that being said, let's look at the activity number 1 and do it in 4 minutes. Then we're able to do corrections after you're done. Let's do this activity in 4 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Let us look at the activity and let's go through the solutions as we look at those questions one by one. Number one says, what do the Zulu call the sun? Zulu call the sun Ilanga. Ilanga. Right, number two, what do the Venda call the moon? They call the moon Nwezi. Right, number three, how do the Soto, Venda, and Setswana describe the Milky Way galaxy? Right, various groups, including the Venda, Setswana, and Soto, described it as a supernatural footpath across the sky along which the ancestor spirits walked. So that's how these tribal groups were able to describe the Milky Way galaxy. Right, that's the activity and its solutions. Let us write down corrections, right, as we proceed. Now, as we continue our topic, a review of space, right? Let's check out how everything started, right? For people to be able to view the space. Okay, it was in 1608 that a Dutch eyeglass maker discovered that by looking through two small lenses held in front of one another, a distant object appeared to be much closer. Right, so this great Dutch was able to discover this. Okay, then now he had to invent the first telescope. He had to invent the first telescope. Okay, through that process. And then just a year later, the famous Italian scientist called Galileo Galilei assembled a telescope that made objects seem 30 times closer. 30 times closer. In the image that we have there shown is this great scientist talking about the great Galileo Galilei. As you can see, there is pictured with some planets and some space objects. So he was able to assemble a telescope that made objects seem 30 times closer. It was a very big breakthrough. And remember that the telescope is the instrument that is used, right, by scientists to view into space. Right, that's a telescope. So now Galileo was able to assemble the telescope. Okay, so now when he looked at the moon, when he looked at the moon, he was amazed, right, at the details he could see. So he was able to focus the telescope to view the moon, and then he was amazed at the details of what he could see. What did you see there? Right, what did you see when you observed? Right, for the first time, you could see craters, you could see mountains and valleys, right, when he was observing, right? You also saw the four largest moons orbiting Jupiter and saw dark spots on the sun. So he was able to view four largest moons orbiting Jupiter and also saw dark spots on the sun. Okay, so that's how great the man was. Okay, from this time onwards, steady improvements in the quality of telescopes have allowed astronomers to see more and more detail in space. Right, remember, astronomers are scientists who study stars, planets, and all objects in what? In space. Okay, if you are to look at the image shown there, we've got interesting view, right? We've got our those space objects, which include asteroids and comets. We've got some planets, right? We've got planet Earth, which is being shown there. Over there, we've got a solar system appearing. Then we've got the water, which is being also shown. So we've got a very good picture that's going to help us relate what is happening in space, right? All those are objects are found in space, right? Comets, right? Planets, stars, right? And of course, the brightest star there, which is the sun, is also showing up from the solar system. So the astronomers were able to view all that, and are still able to view all that through what? Through the telescopes. Okay, so you can see how important are these instruments called telescopes. Okay, then now new types of telescopes have been invented, and they've added to our knowledge of the universe. Now we've got a great knowledge of our universe and what's happening within our universe because of a new technology of telescopes that are now able even to view objects in a more improvised way so that we can know about everything that is within our universe. Right. Now, when Galileo Galilei looked at the Milky Way, remember the Milky Way galaxy is our very one galaxy. As you can see, there was shown there is a beautiful image of our own galaxy, which is the Milky Way galaxy. So now, this great scientist, Galileo, looked at the Milky Way, right? He was using his telescope, but now his telescope did not see to bring the stars closer, right? His telescope was not able to bring the stars closer, right? Because they are too far away. But when he looked at the spaces between the stars, he was very surprised to see many more stars appearing. So he continued to view through his telescope, and then with time, he was able to see many stars popping out through those spaces that he thought they were just empty spaces. But then he realized that there were many stars appearing from those spaces. Okay, and the number of visible stars seemed to increase 1,000 times just by the invention of the telescope. So now these modern telescopes, right, they're now even able to view, right, more objects which are not able to be viewed by those early scientists, because now it's about the quality of the telescopes. They're now improvised. They're now able to view many more, right, stars which were not viewed earlier on. Right. Now, just look at a brief picture of a telescope, right? What does it have? The telescope has got an objective tube. It has got an objective lens, which is at the back there, right? Then we've got the eyepiece tube. There it is, eyepiece tube. Then, of course, we've got the eyepiece lens there. So those lenses are found one in front and one at the back, right? So we've got the objective lens and the eyepiece lens. And the eyepiece lens is found within the eyepiece tube, right? So that's how briefly the telescope is designed. Okay, how does it function, right? The telescope works much like the human eye, right? Let us check quickly our human eye, right? Our human eye, there it is, by having the pupil there in front that we used to review the objects, right? We've got the iris, then we've got the cornea, right? Then we've got the lens. That's the lens there, okay? And then we've got the ciliary muscle. Okay, so this is what is happening in front of the eye. And then the back, we've got the retina, right? Then we've got the fovea, and then, of course, the optic nerve, because the optic nerve is the one which is important for focusing light, right? And then now, so this is the apple shown there, in as much as the eye is able to focus the image of the apple through the lens, right? So that people can be able to relate it to the cornea. That's exactly how the telescope works. Okay, so is the telescope. There it is shown there, right? So now this image of the apple is going to be focused at the back there, which is the objective lens. Okay, so like the eye, its main function is to collect light given off from a distant object and focus that light so that you can see the object. That's how the telescope works. Okay. Now, what more do you need to know, right, about these telescopes, right? The lens at the end of the tube nearest the objects is called the objective lens, right? And the lens nearest your eye is called the eyepiece lens. Let's check out those lenses from that image shown there, right? There it is. We've got the large lens, which gathers and bends light. The ray of light is focused, right, on the lens of the telescope, right? Then now what happens here? It's going to be refracted and focused at the back, where we've got what is called the objective lens, right? Then now we've got a small lens which magnifies and focus light for your eyes. So whenever by using the telescope, that's what happens. Now, when the light enters the telescope, the light is bent. You can say light is bent, and remember that when light is bent, we say it is being refracted. It is being refracted. So light is bent or refracted by the objective lens, right? So that it focuses that light or image at a point. So when light is focused to the lens, it's refracted, and then it is focused to the image at that point. Okay. The eyepiece lens, what does it do? It magnifies the image, making the distant object look bigger and clearer because the light is bent, right? Then we say this telescope works by refraction. Refraction there means the bending of light. Okay, means the bending of light. With that, we come to activity number 2. Let us look at that activity. 4 questions we have. Number 1, people who start reporting space are called. Then number 2, when did the eyeglass maker make the first telescope? Number 3, give labels. For the parts of the telescope, you're supposed to give all the labels there. Then number 4, explain the telescope's main function. Let's do this activity in 4 minutes, then quickly look at the corrections. Right, welcome back. Let us look at the activity and quickly go through the solutions. Right, and number one, it says people who study bodies in space are called what? Right, let's check it out. These people who study bodies in space are called the astronomers. Okay, so remember we said in astronomer, we talk about the scientist who studies planets, stars, and all the other objects in space. So these are called astronomers. And the study of these bodies in space is called astronomy. Okay. Number two, when did the eyeglass maker make the first telescope? This was in 1608 when this Dutch eyeglass maker was able to invent the first telescope. Okay, 1608. Then number three, you're supposed to give labels for the parts of the telescope. Below, we've got A. So A is shown there. We're supposed to name that part. And then we're supposed to name part B. Then we also name part C and part D. Right. Let us look at those parts that we're supposed to know. Right. In A, we've got the objective lens. Right. Objective tube. That's A, objective tube. Right. Then now in B, this one is the objective what? Lens. Right. B is the objective lens. Let's go to C. C is the eyepiece tube. C is the eyepiece what? Tube. Right. Then what's happening to D there? It's another lens. This lens is called the eyepiece what? Lens. So those are the parts of the telescope, and of course the four major parts of the telescope. Okay. Number four, explain the telescope's main function. Telescope main function. Right. Its main function is to collect light, right, given off from a distant object. Then what does it do? It focuses that light so that we can see the object. That's the function of a telescope, right? Through the telescope, we are able to see objects that are not visible through our naked eyes. Then we're able to view those objects, especially it works on objects which are in space. Okay, right. Now let us look at the summary of our lesson. Right? All cultures around the world gave stars different names. Right? If I to recall, we had the Cosal, they call the Milky Way, they call it what? Umnyele. That's what they do. Okay, that's what they call the Milky Way, Umnyele, right? And then, of course, now the Zulu call the sun what? Ilanga. That's what the Zulu call the sun. Okay, Ilanga. Then now we've got the Venda, who also call the moon. They call what? The moon. They call it what? Mwezi. Call it Mwezi. Right. So now you can see that now all those cultures that they are own way of calling out these stars so that they can easily understand them, right? In relation to their own culture. So we've got various names which are given by all these cultures depending on what they would choose to picture the stars with. They would use stories, they would use pictures, they would use some gods and give some names. So those were the names that the early cultures were able to give for the stars, right? They noted the movement of the stars and planets across the sky and used this to mark the passage of time. So they're able to note the movement of the stars in the night sky, and each movement they would see, they would relate it to their own environment and give it a name, right? Some of the stars were given names of gods in their culture. Some of them just given names according to stories they told in their culture, right? That's where we also get some magic girls being also talked about in this case. So all these were ways of trying to make it so understandable to their own culture, this knowledge of stars, right? People often grouped the stars they saw into patterns called constellations. So now remember that if you're talking about constellation, we're talking about what? A group of what? Of stars. Group of stars. That's a constellation, right? That when viewed from the earth, what happens? They form a what? A pattern. Form a pattern. So that's a constellation. Okay. So now these stars were grouped into patterns which are called what? Constellations. Which are called constellations. Right. So it was in 1608 when a Dutch eyeglass maker discovered that by looking through two small lenses held in front of one another, a distant object appeared to be much closer. Right. So remember that we'll talk about the first invention of the telescope. So this great Dutchman was able to invent, right, the telescope, and then now through this telescope he was able to observe that distant objects appeared to be much closer. Since then, it more improvised telescope that up to date they're able now to make us be able to view all those objects in space which were not seen by then. Okay, remember that now when we talk about Dutchman, we cannot fail to talk about the great Italian scientist, right? Galileo Galilei. Okay, Galileo. Remember that he was able now to improvise and come up with another telescope, right? Which now we want to see objects, right? 30 times, okay? Closer, okay? So now, through his work, this great scientist were able to have more improvised telescopes and we have got more knowledge of our space because he was able to view the moon, and from the moon there you could see some craters as you viewed the moon. You also could see some mountains, and then now as you continue to view through space, you was able to see now many more stars that would come out from those spaces that you thought they were just empty spaces. But as you continued to view through the telescope, you could see many other stars appearing and popping up. Then you knew that those empty spaces were actually not empty spaces, but they were stars which were hidden there. And only the telescope was able to view those stars and was able to know that within those empty spaces, there were actual stars which could only be viewed through his great telescope. So this knowledge of the telescope that we need to know. And then now let us look at the telescope that here there. Now the telescope is having some very important parts, right? We've got the eyepiece tube. There it is, eyepiece tube. Then within the eyepiece tube, we've got the eyepiece lens, right? Then now the image, the light is going to pass through the eyepiece lens, then it goes through the objective tube, and then it's going to be focused on the objective lens. Then that's when now you'll be able to observe and view the objects which are in space. Okay, so now that's the end of summary. This is the homework. Let us copy the homework questions. And number 1, people start deporting space are called. Number 2, a group of stars that forms a pattern is called. And number 3, how far away from the sun is the Earth? Number 4, how long does light take to travel from the sun to the Earth? Number 5, if the sun were to turn off now, how long will it take before the Earth is in complete darkness? That's our homework. Right, remember to send your solutions and to interact with us through our WhatsApp number 079-578-2908. Right, with that being said, we come to the end of our today's lesson. Thank you so much. Keep well.